It was raining hard that morning, the kind of rain that blurs the city lights and turns the sidewalks into glassy mirrors. People rushed past, heads bowed under umbrellas, taxis splashed water against the curbs, and horns echoed through the crowded streets. Amelia Lane tightened her grip on her umbrella as she hurried down the slick pavement. Her coffee sloshed dangerously in her cup. Her work bag thumped against her hip, and her heart raced as she checked her watch for the 10th time. 7:52. She muttered under her breath. I'm late. Again. Her breath came out in little white clouds. The icy wind stung her cheeks as she weaved through the crowd, dodging puddles that seemed determined to ruin her already worn-out shoes. That IT wasn't supposed to be like this. Once, Amelia had been a teacher, passionate, confident, and full of dreams. But after her husband's sudden passing 2 years ago, life had turned into a relentless battle of bills, deadlines, and exhaustion. Teaching didn't pay enough, so she'd taken a job as an administrative assistant at a corporate firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, or so she'd hoped. Now, as she raced to get to work before her strict manager noticed her absence, all she could think about was her son, Oliver. Just that morning, he'd looked up at her with sleepy eyes and said, "Mommy, can you stay for breakfast today?" She'd kissed his forehead, fighting the ache in her chest. "Not today, sweetheart. Mommy has to go to work, but I'll be home early, I promise." Except she was late. Again, her alarm clock had failed to ring. The bus had been delayed, and Oliver, bless his heart, had lost one shoe again. She sighed heavily, clutching her bag closer. The world didn't stop for tired single mothers. It only demanded more then. It happened that a loud crash tore through the sound of the rain. Amelia froze. Her eyes darted across the street, and there, just a few yards ahead, a man in a dark gray suit had slipped hard on the wet pavement. His briefcase had flown open, scattering papers into puddles like fallen leaves. He was groaning, trying to push himself up, but his leg was twisted at an odd angle. For a split second, Amelia hesitated. She could already hear her boss's voice in her head. "Late again, Mississippi Lane? You know the rules." But then she saw the pain etched across the man's face, the water soaking through his neatly pressed clothes, and something inside her made the decision for her as she ran. "Sir, are you okay?" she called out, dropping to her knees beside him. The man gritted his teeth, wincing. I think I slipped. My ankle, it hurts like hell." Amelia glanced around. Dozens of people passed by, pretending not to see. One man even stepped around them to avoid the puddle. "Unbelievable. Don't move," she said firmly, holding the umbrella over him to shield him from the downpour. "You might have sprained your ankle. Here." She grabbed his briefcase, rescuing a few soggy papers before they washed down the gutter. He looked at her through the rain, confusion flickering in his eyes. "You don't even know me. Why are you helping?" Amelia gave a faint, tired smile. "Because no one else will." She reached into her bag, pulling out a small first aid kit, something she always carried, just in case. She dabbed at the scrape on his hand with a tissue, then used a hair tie to secure the umbrella handle to a railing, so both her hands were free. "You're good at this," the man muttered, half amused, half in pain. Amelia chuckled softly. "Single mom. Comes with a job description." A cab finally slowed down near the curb, its driver rolling down the window. "You folks need a ride?" "Yes, please," Amelia said, helping the man stand. He leaned heavily on her shoulder, his weight almost knocking her off balance. But she steadied him. "Careful," she said gently. "Step slowly." When he finally sank into the back seat, drenched and shivering, he looked at her again. Really looked at her this time. Rain plastered her hair to her forehead. Her coat was soaked through, but there was a calm strength in her eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You didn't have to stop." She shook her head, smiling faintly. "I couldn't just walk away." The driver turned to her. "You getting in, miss?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I have to get to work." "Work?" The man frowned. "In this weather?" She gave a little laugh. "Rain or shine, bills don't stop coming." He chuckled softly, despite the pain. "What's your name?" "Amelia," she said, pulling her umbrella back open. "Amelia Lane." He nodded slowly, as if committing it to memory. Thank you, Amelia Lane. As the cab drove away, Amelia exhaled, glancing at her watch again. 8:09 a.m. She groaned. She was beyond late now. Still, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. She'd done the right thing. That had to count for something, right? The rain showed no mercy as she sprinted toward the office, her shoes squelching with every step. By the time she reached the lobby, her hair was dripping, her clothes soaked, and her coffee long gone cold. The receptionist gave her a sympathetic look. Rough morning. Amelia forced a small smile. You have no idea. She hurried into the elevator, clutching her bag tightly. All she could think about was her boss's scowl, the lecture she'd get, and the fear gnawing in her stomach. Little did she know that soaked, injured stranger she'd just helped wasn't just some random businessman on the street. He was Ethan Reed, the billionaire CEO of the very company she worked for, and in less than 24 hours, their paths would cross again. But this time, he'd be the one trying to save her. By the time Amelia reached the office, her hair was drenched, her clothes were clinging to her skin, and her shoes squeaked with every step. Her heart pounded as she pushed open the glass doors of Reed Enterprises, praying she could slip to her desk unnoticed. But luck had never been on her side. Standing right beside her cubicle was Mr. Grant, her supervisor, tall, sharp, and always dressed like he was allergic to kindness. His arms were crossed, his lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't even need to speak. Amelia already knew. Miss Lane, he said, his tone icy and formal. Do you know what time it is? Amelia swallowed hard, water dripping from her hair onto the carpet. I'm so sorry, Mr. Grant. There was an accident on my way here. He raised a hand sharply, cutting her off. Don't. Just don't. I'm tired of your excuses. This is the third time you've been late this month. I know, but I swear it wasn't my fault this time, she pleaded, clutching her bag. A man slipped on the sidewalk, and he was hurt. I couldn't just. Not my problem, he snapped. This company runs on discipline, not charity. Amelia's breath caught. I was just trying to help someone. Mr. Grant turned away, shaking his head. And in doing so, you failed to help yourself. You know the policy. 3 strikes, you're out. Her stomach dropped. Please, Mr. Grant, I really need this job. I'm raising my son alone. I'll work extra hours, weekends, anything. Just don't fire me. For a moment, there was silence, and for the briefest second, she thought she saw hesitation in his eyes. But then his expression hardened again. He picked up a thin pink slip from his desk, placed it in front of her, and said coldly, Rules are rules. Pack your things, Mississippi Lane. The words hit like a punch to the chest. Her hands trembled as she stared at the paper. Around her, the office buzzed with the sound of keyboards and murmured conversations. No one looked up. No one said a word. She'd spent months here, arriving early, staying late, skipping lunch breaks just to prove she belonged. And yet, in a few cold seconds, it all vanished. Tears welled in her eyes as she quietly began packing her belongings. A small potted plant, a photo of Oliver in his school uniform, a coffee mug that said, Best Mom Ever. Her co-workers glanced over from their desks, whispering softly, pretending to look busy. Not one of them dared to speak up. That as she zipped her bag, Mr. Grant muttered, You should learn that sentiment doesn't pay bills, Mississippi Lane. That was it, the final sting. Amelia didn't reply. She just picked up her things, lifted her chin, and walked out of the office she had poured her heart into. The rain had stopped by the time she stepped outside. The city glistened under the gray sky, and Amelia stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of everything collapse inside her. She had done the right thing, and somehow it had cost her everything. That evening, the world outside her small apartment window was quiet, the streets glowing with the reflection of passing headlights. Amelia sat on the worn couch, her bag beside her, the termination papers still crumpled in her hand. She felt empty. Bills were stacked on the table. The fridge held little more than milk, bread, and half a carton of eggs. Rent was due in 5 days. Her son's school had just sent home a reminder for tuition, and now she had nothing. The sound of small footsteps pulled her back from her thoughts. Mommy? She looked up. There stood Oliver, her 6-year-old boy. his hair messy, his eyes wide and full of concern. He was clutching his little stuffed bear. "Are you sad?" he asked softly, climbing onto her lap. Amelia blinked back tears and forced a smile. "Just a little, sweetheart." He tilted his head. "Because of work?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah, Mommy had a tough day." He was quiet for a moment, then dug into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made you something." Amelia unfolded it gently. It was a drawing. Crayon scribbles of her and Oliver holding hands under a rainbow, smiling, with the words "Me and Mommy, best team ever." Her chest tightened as she tried not to cry. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you, baby." Oliver looked up at her earnestly. "You always tell me that good people get good things." Amelia smiled sadly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I do, don't I?" He nodded firmly. "Then maybe tomorrow, something good will happen to you." She hugged him tightly, closing her eyes. His small arms wrapped around her neck, warm and trusting. "I hope you're right, baby," she whispered. "I really hope you're right." They stayed like that for a long time, mother and son, holding onto each other in the dim glow of the lamp. Outside, the rain began again, tapping softly against the window, like the world itself was weeping for her. But somewhere, far across town, another storm was brewing, one that would soon turn Amelia's entire world upside down, because at that very moment, in a hospital suite across the city, Ethan Reed, the man she had helped that morning, was sitting up in bed, staring at a report on his tablet. He was scrolling through employee files, looking for something, or rather, someone. And when he saw her name, Amelia Lane, his eyes widened in shock that it was her, the woman who had stopped in the rain, the woman who didn't walk away. And when he saw the termination note attached to her record, something inside him snapped. The next day, the world that had fallen apart for Amelia was about to change forever. 2 days later, Amelia was folding laundry when the phone rang. She almost didn't answer. She assumed it was another bill collector or telemarketer. But something told her to pick it up. "Hello," she said cautiously. "Miss Lane?" came a calm, professional voice. "This is from Reed Enterprises. Mr. Ethan Reed would like to meet with you." Amelia froze. The laundry slipped from her hands. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "Mr. Reed, the CEO of Reed Enterprises," the woman repeated. "He requested to meet with you personally. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp." Amelia's heart pounded in her chest. There must be some mistake." "No mistake, ma'am," the woman said politely. "Please bring your ID for security clearance. Mr. Reed's office is on the top floor." When the call ended, Amelia stood motionless, staring at the phone. The CEO wanted to meet her. Her mind raced. Why? Did he find out about her termination? Was this about that morning in the rain? Or worse, did Mr. Grant tell him something? She couldn't sleep that night. Every possible scenario ran through her head. Some hopeful, some terrifying to be why morning. She decided she had nothing left to lose. She ironed her one good blazer, tied her hair neatly, and clutched her worn-out purse. Her reflection in the mirror looked calm, but inside, she was shaking. "Wish me luck, sweetheart," she whispered to Oliver before leaving. "Good luck, Mommy," he beamed, waving his crayon-covered hands. When Amelia stepped into the building, it felt like another world entirely. The marble floors gleamed. The lobby smelled faintly of roses and coffee. Employees in crisp suits moved with purpose, their shoes clicking across the floor. She recognized none of it, even though she'd worked here. This was a world far above her old cubicle on the lower floors. At the reception desk, a woman smiled. "Mississippi Amelia Lane? Mr. Reed is expecting you. Take the private elevator to the top floor." Private elevator. Amelia's stomach twisted with nerves as the glass doors closed. The ride felt endless, her reflection staring back at her. A single mom who didn't belong in a place like this. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into a space that looked like something out of a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the skyline. Abstract paintings hung on the walls. A single desk, modern, minimal, sat near the center, with a view that made the city look like a toy set. And standing by that window was him, the man from the rain. The stranger she had helped. He turned when she entered, tall, composed, but with warmth in his eyes that she hadn't noticed that day. "So it was you," he said with a soft smile. Amelia froze, her eyes widening. You're Mr. Reed?" He nodded. "Ethan Reed, CEO of Reed Enterprises. Or, as you know me, the guy who can't walk on wet sidewalks." A nervous laugh escaped her lips. "I had no idea." He gestured for her to sit. "Please come in. You're not in trouble, I promise." Amelia perched on the edge of the chair, still clutching her purse tightly. "I wanted to thank you," Ethan said sincerely. "You stopped that day when no one else did. I remember looking up and seeing people just pass me by. But you stayed." She shrugged slightly, embarrassed. "I just did what anyone would have done." "Not everyone," he replied quietly. "You gave up your umbrella to keep me dry, and I noticed your clothes were soaked. You didn't even ask my name." Her cheeks flushed. "I didn't think it mattered. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." He smiled. "It mattered to me." There was a pause, warm, genuine, before he picked up a folder on his desk. "I did a little digging," he admitted. "I asked HR for your file. It says you were recently terminated." Amelia's stomach dropped. "Oh, please don't be upset. I shouldn't have been late. It's just—" He lifted a hand gently. "Because of me." She blinked. "What?" "That morning," he said. "You were late because you stopped to help me. If you hadn't, I'd probably still be in a hospital bed." Her heart pounded. "Yes, sir. But I never meant for it to cause trouble." "Trouble?" Ethan chuckled softly. "You saved me from a broken leg, and probably a lawsuit with my own insurance company." Amelia's eyes widened slightly, unsure whether to laugh. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful now. "You know, Mississippi Lane, people think success is built by how fast you move, how efficient you are. But that morning, you reminded me that it's about how human you are." She stared at him. Unsure how to respond, he closed the folder and folded his hands. "Tell me honestly, if you could start fresh, what would you want to do?" She blinked. I don't understand." "You said in your file you used to work in education before joining our company," he said. "You wanted to start a program for working mothers?" Her voice softened. "It was just a dream. I wanted to help moms who couldn't afford daycare, to give them a place to leave their kids while they worked. But dreams don't pay bills." Ethan studied her for a long moment, the exhaustion in her eyes, the quiet strength behind her words. Then he smiled. "Maybe they can." Amelia frowned slightly. "Sir." Ethan stood and walked toward the window, hands in his pockets. "Mississippi Lane, I'm not offering your old job back." Her heart sank. He turned back to her with a kind smile. "I'm offering something better." She blinked. "Better?" He nodded. "I want you to run a new project under Reed Enterprises, a foundation for single parents. You'll have full support, funding, and a team, and you'll report directly to me." Amelia just stared at him, speechless. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said softly. "You've already proven what kind of person you are." Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you. I thought the world forgot about people like me." Ethan's voice was gentle. "Sometimes, it takes losing everything to remind us what truly matters." She smiled a real, grateful smile. "Then I'd love to say yes." As she left his office, heart still racing, Ethan watched her go that he didn't know it yet. But that decision, that one act of kindness repaid, would change both their lives forever. Because what started with a moment of compassion in the rain was about to become the beginning of something far greater. Ethan Reed wasn't known for second chances. In the corporate world, he was sharp, decisive, and famously hard to impress. But that morning, when he looked across his office desk and saw Amelia, humble, nervous, yet honest, something in him shifted. After a moment of silence, he said, "Mississippi Lane, I have an offer for you." Her heart raced. "My old job back?" she asked hopefully. He shook his head slightly, a smile forming on his lips. "No, something different." Amelia blinked. "Different?" Ethan leaned forward. "I need a new personal assistant. Someone organized, empathetic, and trustworthy. And after what I saw that day in the rain, I think I found her." For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Me? But I don't think I'm qualified for something like that. He chuckled softly. You managed to handle chaos in the middle of a storm, saved a stranger, and still worried about being late for work. Trust me, you're qualified. Amelia's lips parted, but no words came out. Her mind was spinning. I need someone I can rely on, Ethan continued. Not just to keep my calendar straight, but to remind me what actually matters in life. Someone grounded. Someone like you. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. He smiled gently. Say yes. She laughed nervously, wiping at her eyes. Yes. Then yes, I'll do it. Good, he said, extending his hand. Welcome aboard, Mississippi Lane. And just like that, everything changed. From her very first day as Ethan's assistant, Amelia could feel the weight of the new role. The office suite on the top floor was like a different planet, all glass and marble, far from the cubicle maze below. But she didn't let it intimidate her. She arrived early, dressed neatly, and carried herself with quiet determination. She answered calls, managed appointments, organized files, and handled meetings with a kind of calm efficiency that surprised even Ethan. Once, when a high-stakes deal nearly fell apart because of a missed contract signature, it was Amelia who noticed the oversight, caught it in time, and saved the company millions. Ethan called her into his office afterward. You just prevented a financial disaster, he said, smiling. I think that deserves more than a thank you. She shook her head modestly. I was just doing my job. Amelia, he said, leaning forward, you don't just do your job. You make everyone else's easier. That's rare. She smiled faintly. I guess being a mom trains you for everything. He laughed, a real, genuine laugh she hadn't heard before. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm between them began to flow naturally. Ethan found himself relying on her not just for work, but for perspective. When board members argued, she'd quietly offer a solution that made sense to everyone. When he skipped lunch for the third day in a row, she'd set a sandwich on his desk without saying a word. When deadlines piled up, she'd stay late, typing away long after others had gone home, and he'd walk by her desk just to check that she'd eaten dinner. She reminded him that success wasn't just about power, it was about people. And every time she smiled, he found himself smiling back. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings, Ethan walked into his office to find Amelia sitting by the window, staring out at the city lights. She didn't hear him come in. Tough day, he asked gently. She startled slightly and turned, laughing. You could say that. My brain's fried. He walked over, hands in his pockets. You've been working nonstop all week. Take tomorrow off. She shook her head. I can't. There's still the investor presentation, and your flight itinerary needs confirming. He interrupted softly. Amelia, you're allowed to rest. Her lips curved into a small smile. Rest doesn't pay the bills, Mr. Reed. He smiled back, though something in her words lingered with him. Do you ever stop thinking about others? She shrugged. I guess it's just how I'm wired. For a moment, they both fell silent, the hum of the city filling the space between them. Ethan studied her, the way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the quiet strength in her eyes, the way she carried the weight of the world but never complained. Amelia, he said softly, can I tell you something? She looked up. Of course. When I first took over this company, he said, I thought I had everything figured out. I built walls, worked nonstop, and convinced myself that emotions had no place in business. Then you came along, and suddenly I'm questioning everything. Her brow furrowed slightly. Because of me? He smiled faintly. Because you reminded me that kindness isn't weakness, that doing the right thing, even when it costs you, is what real strength looks like. Amelia blinked back unexpected tears. You give me too much credit. Not enough, he said quietly. For a moment, they just looked at each other, two people from different worlds, bound by a shared humanity neither had planned for. Then Amelia stood, clearing her throat. You still have 2 calls waiting, Mr. Reed. He chuckled softly. Back to business then. She smiled. Always. From that day forward, something subtle began to change between them. Their conversations weren't just about work anymore. He'd ask about her son Oliver, how school was going, what games he liked, what he wanted to be when he grew up. Amelia would smile as she told stories about bedtime forts, late-night homework, and burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings. And slowly, Ethan found himself drawn not just to her competence, but to her heart. When she laughed, it softened something in him he hadn't realized was hard. When she spoke, it reminded him of all the things success had made him forget. Sometimes, late at night, he'd look out his office window and think of her walking home in the rain that day, choosing to stop, choosing compassion when the world hurried past. That choice had changed his life more than any business deal ever could. And while neither of them said it out loud, both could feel it. Something unspoken growing quietly between them, respect, trust, and perhaps something deeper, something neither dared to name. The ballroom shimmered with gold and silver, a sea of glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the soft hum of music drifted through the air. Cameras flashed as some of the city's most powerful people toasted to another successful year at Reed Enterprises. Amelia stood near the tall glass window, watching the city lights far below. From this high up, everything looked peaceful, as if the chaos of life didn't exist. But in her chest, her heart was fluttering. She still couldn't believe she was there. A year ago, she'd been packing up her things in a cubicle after being fired. Now she was standing at the company's annual gala, not as an employee fading into the crowd, but as someone who had earned the CEO's trust, and maybe something even more precious. Behind her, she heard a familiar voice. "You know," Ethan said softly, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. "You still look like you're waiting for someone to tell you this is a dream." Amelia turned, laughing lightly. "Can you blame me? A few months ago, I was catching the bus in the rain. Now I'm standing in the most glamorous room in the city." He handed her a glass, his eyes warm. "Then let's make a toast to rainstorms that change everything." She raised her glass, clinking it gently against his. "To unexpected beginnings," she said. They took a sip, standing side by side. For a moment, neither spoke. They just watched the lights shimmer across the skyline, their reflections faint in the window glass. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "You know, I still remember that rainy morning." She smiled faintly. "So do I. I thought I'd ruined my life that day." He chuckled quietly, shaking his head. "You didn't ruin it. You saved mine instead." Her eyes widened slightly. "You mean when you fell?" He turned toward her, his gaze deep and sincere. "Not just that. That day, I realized how empty everything had become. All the money, the meetings, the endless pursuit of more. None of it meant anything until you reminded me what it means to care." Amelia blinked, unsure how to respond. "Ethan," he smiled softly. "No more, sir." "Just Ethan." She laughed, shaking her head. "Old habits die hard." The music changed, a slower tune, soft and elegant. Around them, couples began to move toward the dance floor. Ethan held out his hand. "May I?" Her breath caught for a moment. Then she nodded, slipping her hand into his. As they stepped onto the floor, everything else seemed to fade. The chatter, the lights, the crowd. It was just them. He moved with a quiet grace that surprised her, guiding her gently through the rhythm of the song. She looked up, and for the first time, saw not the billionaire CEO, but the man beneath the title, kind, thoughtful, and human. "You know," she said softly, "when I lost my job that day, I thought it was the end of everything. But maybe it was just the beginning of something else." Ethan smiled. "Fate has a funny way of working, doesn't it?" "Maybe," she said with a small laugh. "Or maybe it's just karma rewarding you for not yelling at me for ruining your papers in the rain." He laughed, a sound that drew a few curious glances from nearby guests. "You didn't ruin anything, Amelia. You reminded me what mattered, and I haven't forgotten it for a single day." Her smile faded into something gentler. "I was just doing what anyone would have done." He stopped dancing for a moment, looking into her eyes. "No," he said quietly. "Not everyone would have done what you did. That's the difference." The words lingered between them like the final note of a song. Amelia felt her heart tighten in her chest, warmth spreading through her. "Ethan," she began softly. "Why me? You could have anyone by your side. Someone with experience, status, money. He cut her off with a small shake of his head. Because none of that matters. You reminded me of the kind of person I want to be, and the kind of people I want beside me. Her breath caught. She didn't know what to say. He smiled faintly, his voice low. You saved me twice, Amelia. Once on the street, and once for myself. Tears glimmered in her eyes. I didn't mean to save anyone, she whispered. I just didn't want to walk past someone who needed help. He reached up, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb. And that's exactly why you did. The music swelled, and he drew her closer, their steps slow and steady under the glittering chandeliers. For a long moment, neither spoke. They didn't have to. The unspoken words hung in the air. Gratitude, affection, and something deeper still. When the song ended, the applause from the room barely reached them. They were in their own world. Ethan looked down at her, his voice soft. Amelia, I used to think power meant control. That being strong meant never needing anyone. But the truth is, I've never felt stronger than when I'm standing beside someone like you. Her eyes met his, full of emotion. You're not the man I thought you were when I first started here, she said quietly. He smiled. And you're not the woman I thought I'd ever meet. They both laughed gently, a shared laugh that felt like the closing of an old chapter and the beginning of a new one. That across the ballroom, people whispered, some snapping photos of the two dancing together. But neither noticed. For them, this night wasn't about appearances or status. It was about gratitude and the beautiful, unpredictable way kindness had changed their lives. As the evening wound down, Ethan walked her to the terrace overlooking the city. The night air was cool. Carrying the faint scent of rain, he looked out over the glittering skyline. Funny, he said softly. A year ago, I wouldn't have stopped if I'd seen someone fall in the rain. I was too busy chasing success. Amelia turned toward him. And now, he smiled, his eyes warm and steady. Now I know success doesn't mean anything if you have to lose your humanity to find it. She nodded slowly, her heart full. You found it again. He looked at her, his voice almost a whisper. Because of you. They stood there in silence, the city glowing beneath them. And for the first time in years, Ethan Reed, the billionaire who thought he had everything, realized he finally had something real. Amelia looked out at the stars and smiled, her hand resting gently over his, because sometimes the smallest act of compassion can change two lives forever. Sometimes, life has a way of testing us at the worst moments, when we're tired, lost, or afraid. But even in those moments, kindness has power. Amelia lost her job for helping a stranger. And that very act of kindness changed her destiny. It's a reminder to all of us. What you give out to the world always finds a way back to you. Maybe not right away, but when you need it most. Because true success isn't measured in money or status. It's measured in heart. That if the story touched you, share it with someone who believes in doing good, even when no one's watching.